We have a very special show planned for y'all tonight. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and we are going to be talking about how hip hop started. We're going to be talking about pioneers. We're going to be talking about the contributions of women and Latinos. We're going to be even getting into some of the spirited debates about who the GOAT of hip hop is. But first, we want to start with a salute to the legend, Kurtis Blow.
Cause these are the breaks. Brakes on a bus, brakes on a car, brakes to make you superstar.
That is legendary rapper Kurtis Blow performing the iconic hit, The Breaks. It climbed up the charts after being released in 1980. Of course, Kurtis Blow is a hip-hop pioneer, and he is credited as the first rapper to be signed to a major label. His influence is felt all over the industry. Artists like Jay-Z, Nas, De La, Redman, they've all sampled Blow's music. His impact continues. Nearly a decade before Kurtis Blow dropped his first album, hip-hop was in the Bronx. In the early 70s, Clive Campbell, a.k.a. DJ Kool Herc, a.k.a. the father of hip-hop, threw a party. There was DJ and there was breakdancing. Somebody was rocking the mic and the dopest fashion was all in the place to be. And after that, people tried to outdo him and each other. And that is the competitive nature of hip-hop. It wasn't just a genre. It was a culture. It was a life. And it continues to evolve. I want to bring my panel in to help us build on hip-hop. We got Chuck Jig-Saw Creekmur, the CEO of allhiphop.com, and we have Dawn-Elissa Fischer, Associate Professor of Anthropology at San Francisco State University. She's also the co-founder and Associate Director of Harvard's Hip Hop Archive. Chuck, I'm going to start with you, and I want to start by saying congratulations. The legacy of your premier hip-hop website is about to hit the screen. Quincy Jones III, the son of the mega music producer, has been tapped to direct a 4-part series that highlights the story and the legacy of allhiphop.com. And the collaboration includes Neo Studios and 2114 Media. For y'all that don't know, and everybody knows, the hip-hop news site was created by Greg Watkins and Chuck Jig-Saw Creekmur back in 1998. He himself is a pioneer. Chuck, this is the first time that you're talking about it since the news came out. Talk to us about what this means, not just to you, but to the culture.
I think it's everything, right? Because first of all, we have to recognize that hip hop is not just rappers, right? So hip hop is art, hip hop is photography, hip hop is fashion. And from our point of view, hip hop is also media. The people like myself who stand on the front lines are the ones that protect the culture. In some instances, we've been on the front lines in that regard, also protecting the culture and also representing, a really authentic version of our stories. So we're very proud to be a media outlet that's getting this type of attention. We hope to create a really amazing and epic telling of our side of things and continue on with telling those narratives.
And telling those narratives is important. Dawn-Elissa, one of the narratives that I think is always important to tell for generations and generations and generations to come is what the roots of hip-hop actually are. Help us break that down a little bit. Where did hip-hop start? How did it start? Why did it start?
The roots of hip-hop is a continuation of toasts and boasts. Rapping, we had the word rap before hip-hop. And it's basically what I've been studying for the past 25 years through cultural anthropology, cultural and linguistic anthropology. It is a continuation of our culture and our history.
Dawn-Elissa, though, you don't just study it, you also have lived hip-hop. You've been integral to how we think about it, how we talk about it, how we curate it. One of the things I love to talk about when I think about hip-hop is how it's evolved. Chuck said something really important. He said hip-hop's not just about rappers. A lot of times in the early days, the MC wasn't even at the center of the show. I'm thinking about what it meant to rock a live crowd, what it meant to rock a live party.
And that's what I love about hip hop. I mean, I feel like you're linking to this idea of DJ culture and the importance of the beat. One thing that I love about hip hop is that it links the past to the present and helps us imagine our Afro futures or our futures. And so that beat, there's through sampling and so forth, that hip hop forms this hypertext or a timeline that helps generations come together and so forth. And Chuck's work with allhiphop.com, helping bring that across, helping people get access to that across generations is also, it's a very important part of the culture that continues that we call hip hop.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Chuck, help us understand. There's some kids out there watching this right now that can't imagine hip hop outside of social media and YouTube and outside of singles on iTunes, you know what I mean, these other outlets. What does it mean to think about hip hop, not just as something that gets mass produced with millions of people buying the record, but to be locally at a party, like Dawn-Elissa said, with the beat driving things, with an MC moving a crowd, a DJ rocking a party. What did it mean to think about hip hop as a local thing and as part of a culture of actually moving a crowd?
I think that KRS-One once said, hip hop is not something you do, it's something you live. And I think for those of us that grew up in hip hop when it really was in its infancy, we were the ones that were able to do almost everything in hip hop, right? So you might have tried your hand at graffiti, DJing, dancing, break dancing, and also rap, and so and then there's everything else, right? Knowledge of self and studying and all of those other things. And if you're considering yourself hip hop, if you say I am hip hop, which a lot of us have said, that means that you know about all the elements. You've maybe tried all the elements, and you might have stayed in your basement and practiced those things before you came outside. Nowadays, I think a lot of people are learning as they go along. They might put their weak rhymes on Instagram before they master it. You know what I mean? And so now it's a lot more public. And then, when you went outside, you were outside. So you were talking to people, you were practicing with your friends, you were battling with other people to see who is actually the best. It wasn't a popularity contest, it was a skills contest. And I think that that's why the culture flourished in the way that it did. And not for nothing, it was a fully immersive experience, right? So when an album dropped, we studied every single aspect of that album, from who engineered it to where it was recorded and who produced it and who wrote it and all of the elements of it. If there was a video, we studied it and we learned about that city, wherever it might be. Started out in New York, but eventually it was in LA, it was in Miami, it was in Philly and other places too. And each one of them had a very distinct style and way that they created hip hop.
Nah, that's so real, y'all. And that's what I love about hip hop. Hip hop, to me, is the personification and the embodiment of what it means to be black in this country. We took what we had and we made the most of it. And we didn't just take the thing and make the most of it. We took the most of it and made it the best of it. I mean, think about these kids out there, y'all, in post-industrial urban America. They schools getting shut down. They getting pulled off the subway. They not allowed to be in public space. They don't have no after-school music and arts programs. They ain't got none of that stuff. And what do these kids do? They don't just go and give up. They go into the basement. They go grab grandmama's record collection. They go and get their granddaddy's record player, and they turn the turntable into an instrument when the school wouldn't give them one. They use a different kind of literacy. The record becomes their vocabulary, and they take funky drummer. They take James Brown samples. They take old jazz samples. They take it and they put it on a turntable. They scratch, they cut, they mix, and they turn it into something else. Back in the South, my grandma used to say, if you ain't got meat, eat the greens. If you ain't got the greens, you make some pot liquor. You take what you have. The great anthropologist Melville Herskovitz called it the deification of accidents. What does that mean? I mean, you take what you got and you use it for what you want to, even if it wasn't something you expected. That's what hip-hop is. That is black genius in a nutshell. And black and brown people up in the Bronx doing that and turn it into a global phenomenon is a testament to black genius. And this whole episode is going to be a testament to black genius. So y'all stay right here. I got two black geniuses with me. We're going to talk all about hip-hop for the whole show. Coming up next, I want to give a salute, though, to the sisters in hip-hop. Stay with me. You are watching theGrio with Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome back to theGrio with Marc Lamont Hill. This year, hip-hop celebrates 50 years. Can you believe it? 50 years. And tonight on theGrio, we can't have an honest conversation about the genre without talking about the sisters who have been knocking down the doors, not just for other women artists, but for the genre itself. Because women have always been part of hip hop, rapping, producing, DJing, creating this beautiful art that we now call hip hop, even before the genre had a name. From MC Shy Rock, considered the first female rapper influencer, to Meg Thee Stallion, we can't have hip hop without women.
Instinct leads me to another flow. I'm hitting switches like Eric on the solo creek for yo G. It's the BRAT. I'm in the 90s, you're still in the 80s, right? I rock the mic, they say I'm not ladylike.
Let me bring my guests back. I got Chuck Jig-Saw Creekmur, CEO of All Hip Hop, and I got the brilliant Dr. Dawn-Elissa Fischer, Associate Professor of Anthropology at San Francisco State University, also the co-founder and Associate Director of Harvard's Hip Hop Archive. Dawn-Elissa, a lot of times when we talk about women in hip hop, we simply don't have a deep enough or long enough conversation. I feel like women are sometimes an afterthought in hip hop. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes. And it's frustrating as we celebrate our 50th to have dedicated so much of my life and to see my mentors, Dr. Marcelina Morgan, which is why we have the Hip Hop Archive at Harvard and was at Stanford and was at UCLA, and paved a path for this field that we now call like hip hop pedagogy, to do a lot of the scholarly and community grounded and political work that we do. Like women of multiple generations were always there organizing, helping, like collaboratively shaping culture, knowledge, and power. So from Cindy Campbell, Marcelina Morgan, Professor Shawrock, women and non-binary and trans-identified hip-hop cultural producers have always been, exist now, and it can be frustrating to, particularly on the at 50, to see.
Yeah. Right. You would think at
that,
50 we would have come somewhere. Right. You thought we'd arrived somewhere different. But Chuck, I feel like we're still having the same conversation. We don't even talk about MCs. We got to say she's a woman MC. She's a female MC, whatever they people say. It's like at some point we have to be able to just have a conversation about women in artistry. When I look at somebody like Nicki Minaj, for example, just to give you a modern example, you know, Nicki is one of the dopest MCs in the game, one of the most successful rappers we've ever seen. And there are people who won't even bring her into the conversation because she's getting characterized as a woman MC and not on the same criteria we would judge men.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I noted during the Grammy conversation that Nicki Minaj was someone that definitely deserved to get that nod. And furthermore, in the grand scheme of things, absolutely deserves to be among the elite MCs and rappers and entertainers even that we see today. And so this conversation has to be had, and we have to have this kind of reckoning and coming to Jesus conversation, because you do have people out there that are true greats. You have people like Rhapsody, you have people like Shay Noir, you have people like Jean Grey, who are as amazing human beings, but also artists as in any genre, not just hip hop, right? And so, the other day I saw, very in passing, Jean Grey was telling her fan base, "Don't ask me to rap anymore." And that made me sad. It's almost like I kind of just ignored it because I didn't want to see the reality that one of the true great MCs ever is sort of calling it quits. So I really want us to continue to uphold and uplift, rather, our women in hip hop, and not to even attach that title to them, because it's just artists, it's just MCs, and greatness doesn't have a gender, as far as I'm concerned.
Right, and the fact that many people will be watching this show and not aware of Jean Grey, when she is literally one of the most gifted rappers to ever emerge in the genre, irrespective of gender or anything else. She's just fire. The fact that people might not know that is a testament, again, to how women have been silenced and erased in hip hop. But Dawn-Elissa, it sounded like you were about to jump in. Go ahead.
I wonder how that'll change with time. because thankfully for work like yours, Dr. Hill, and your work, Chuck, with allhiphop.com, your work has been taught in these hip hop classes that I've been teaching for over 20 years and 15 years at SF State. And as being in conversation with teens and college age people all this time, many people I'm seeing newer generations not make those categories that say we grew up with. And so like I remember 10 years ago, for example, maybe a little bit even longer, students talking about and working with Nicki Minaj's work in my Black visual media courses as the top MC for them, and same teaching Jean Grey's work and so forth, particularly Taco Day, because this work links to aspects of our full humanity. And so I'm wondering if this will change as like, say, my son, who's a teenager, 16-year-old's generation. I'm wondering if that'll change as shifts in control of media happen over time. Yeah, I'm just wondering if it'll change. I hope.
I'm wondering the same thing, because I'm also thinking about how we remember these artists. I'm looking at this list right now of the top 50 greatest rappers that Billboard and Vibe came out with. And I would just argue in general it's a trash list. But when I look at the top 20, only 2 women on the list, Nicki Minaj and Missy Elliott. Nicki at number 10, Missy Elliott at number 19. Now, I may have some quibbles with both of their placements, but the fact that there's only 2 women artists on here is a bit curious to me. I mean, is there no room for MC Lyte? Is there no room for a Queen Latifah? Is there no room for Lauryn Hill, who I would argue is a better rapper than almost everybody on this list? So, but where's the space for those kinds of things? Just in the top 20 here. Chuck, I wonder if we just don't give women enough credit for their lyrical gifts, just based on how we remember them, how we curate them, how we narrate the greatest ever conversation.
Well, I think you have to look at where the list is coming from, first of all, and respect to some of those people. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and bash it too hard, because I do know some of those people that put that list together, and I have an opinion or maybe some insider information that I'll leave for the imagination, but I don't know that they had full control over that. That said, I think that we do have to take into account who's creating the list and what is their understanding of the culture and what is the criteria for the list, right? Not just the women on the list, but also some of the other notables that are high up. And that's a conversation. I saw you kind of included some of those notes in your Instagram post. And so there should be a clear-cut criteria or not, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, the list, any hip hop 50 list of just pure MCs, and it's a conundrum. You're right. How do we do that? How do you do
Ain't nobody gonna be happy. I get that.
Right.
No, everybody's not gonna be happy with the list. But if you have a list of 50 people and you don't see a representation of women on there, that's strange to me. You don't have a representation of dope artists, people who have shifted the genre. It's weird to me. Anyway, I'm going to keep y'all here for a minute. We're going to have a little bit of fun. I want them to talk about who the best artists of the decade were in their brain. They got some tough decisions to make, and they're going to do it right after this. Welcome back to theGrio. Tonight we are celebrating hip-hop's 50th anniversary, and I've been hanging out with Dawn-Elissa Fischer and Chuck Creekmur, 2 hip-hop experts, analysts, and people who just are good old-fashioned hip-hop heads. So I'm going to play a quick game with them. I only got about a minute or some change to play a game of this or that. That means I'm going to call out a decade, and you have to call out the greatest artist of that decade. No thinking, no explanations, no analysis. I just want your answer. Chuck, the 2000s.
The whole 2000s?
Like the aughts. Like the aughts, 20 to 2010.
Oh, Kendrick Lamar.
from 2000, 2010?
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Jay-Z.
Okay,
Ah,
I was about to flip this whole table over. Dawn-Elissa, the 90s.
Lauryn Hill.
That's a solid answer. I would probably say something different to both of y'all, but I'll let them both go. How about the 80s? How about the 80s, Chuck?
man, this is hard, man. I'm gonna go with Run DMC.
Ooh.
Yep.
And
Run
I'm
DMC.
going to give Dawn-Elissa the challenging question of top hip-hop artists of all time.
Rakim.
Ooh. Chuck, I have to give you a chance to respond to that. What you say, Chuck?
Of all time, well, I have to go with Jay-Z.
I want to thank Dawn-Elissa Fischer for joining us. Chuck Creekmur is going to keep rocking with us. Everybody stay right here on theGrio. We're going to give credit where it is due. People don't talk about how Latinos contribute to hip-hop culture. Welcome back to theGrio and our special show highlighting the 50th anniversary of hip-hop. From breakdancing to DJing and rapping, Latinx communities have had a major influence on hip-hop culture. Artists like Pitbull and Fat Joe are household names, and they're really just a small sampling of the artists on the hip-hop charts who are from various parts of the Latino diaspora. But that is just a small piece of it. Latin artists have been a part of hip-hop from day one, not just rapping, but participating in every dimension of the culture. I want to bring in some folk who can help me make sense of all of this. I got Chuck Jig-Saw Creekmur. He's CEO of All Hip Hop. Y'all been talking to him all night. And, of course, I'm going to bring into the conversation my man, Bobbito Garcia. He's a DJ, an author, a filmmaker, and a hip-hop expert. Bobbito, my brother, I'm going to start with you, man. Do hip-hop artists, or do Latinx hip-hop artists get the recognition they deserve?
I think so. You know, within my circles, you know, coming up in hip hop in the 70s and 80s, you know, it was like required to be down to know your history and have knowledge, you know, knowledge of self, knowledge of community, you know, knowledge of the world. So, you know, dating back to the inception of hip hop as a concept and as a culture, you know, we've been there every step of the way.
I'm glad you just said that. But I wonder if because you are so true school and so on the ground and so in the grassroots of hip hop, you getting the credit in your circles. But I'm wondering if the broader public gives, you know, particularly Puerto Ricans, that level of credit. And the reason I say that is I talk to a lot of youngins out there and they talk about hip hop and they seem to now talk about it as a black thing that Latinos are gleaming onto, as opposed to something that is as much an Afro-Latino project as it is an African project or a Latino project. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I mean, you know, the terminology we can spend, you know, 5 days, 5 semesters, you know, breaking it down. But certainly, I mean, you know, you could point to some Puerto Ricans early on whose contributions to hip hop culture cannot be negated in any era. You know, I mean, Lee Quiñones was a Puerto Rican cat from the Lower East Side. He was the #1 most wanted graffiti writer in the 1970s on the MTA's list. That's, you know, the Metropolitan Transit Authority. They can't be negated, you know. And you even go to Kool Herc, the reason why he created the merry-go-round, you know, which is the foundation for what hip hop music becomes, you know, basically the loop that Grandmaster Flash, you know, sort of perfects. I mean, his inspiration were the breakers on the dance floor. He wanted to extend the best part of the record so that the dancers could go nuts. Those dancers were predominantly Puerto Rican, as well as one parent is African American, the other parent is Puerto Rican. You know, some were Black Puerto Ricans. You know, people talk about Black and Latino as if there are Black people who are Latin, who identify as Latin. You know, the African slave trade, unfortunately, went, you know, all through Brazil, you know, Caribbean. So you got people who claim Puerto Rican and are black. They may not even conceptually know that, and especially in that era where the language was limited because of the colonized mind. And as we open up to the to our histories and to our lineages, we realize like a Grandmaster DST, who wins the Grammy Award with Herbie Hancock for rocking it. One of his parents was Puerto Rican. Africa Islam, member of the Zulu Nation, who does the second or third hip hop radio show in history. One of his parents is Puerto Rican. And just because I say that doesn't mean that their parent that was Puerto Rican wasn't black too. They might have very well been Afro-Boricua, but it's like people have a sensibility of when they hear the like something apart, it could very well be combined, and that's sort of the unity that Africa Bambaataa, proposed with the Zulu Nation. I interviewed him in the 90s and he said, yo, music has no color, which is odd for a person who, created an organization based on the Zulus in Africa. And that was his logical inspiration, and who empowered Black people in the South Bronx by pushing this forward culture and being a godfather. But Bambaataa was all about being not exclusive, but inclusive. And, we're talking about the pillars of hip hop in the 70s and how it moves forward from there. So, certainly, I mean, and I'm not talking about the Rocksteady crew. I'm talking about pre-Rocksteady. Like the best breakers were the Batch Boys, Track 2, Spy, all Puerto Rican, and that's who the DJs are playing for to make this music form and move forward. So it's really interesting. I mean, Spy, if you don't talk to him or you don't know his background, you think he's black, and he was black. He was a black Puerto Rican. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Africa Islam.
And that's what makes it so fascinating to me, right? Because there's the general thing of, particularly, you're talking about Puerto Ricans, the impact of the slave trade, and saying that Puerto Ricans themselves are tied directly to Africa. And then there's the fact of saying there's a whole community of Afro-Latinos and Afro-Boricuas in particular who contributed to the culture. And sometimes we feel like we have to pick one or the other, but hip-hop was a space where you could kind of perform both identities or engage both identities, which is a beautiful thing. But I think, Chuck, sometimes we... Oh, go ahead, Bobbito. I'll give you the last word on that.
I was going to say the beauty of hip-hop was that we didn't even engage on nationalities. In a lot of instances, it was like hip-hop became your nationality. And we became part of that movement. And that's what propelled us out of our youth. And not to say that we shouldn't be, proud about, being black. And we shouldn't be proud about being Puerto Rican or Guatemalan or whatever it was. But, it's like hip-hop became this utopia that we all felt like included in and accepted in. And that was the beauty of how it grew.
Absolutely. Chuck, do you think as black folk we don't do enough to kind of spotlight that? And particularly, I'm not talking about the new sort of Latino artists who come into the game and we know they're Puerto Rican, we know they're this, we know they're that. But I'm talking about when we talk about the roots and we tell the story of hip-hop, do you feel like we don't do enough to tell the story of Puerto Ricans?
That's a good question. It's kind of a tough one for me to answer. I think we probably could do a better job. I feel like you know what I feel? I feel like we're competing right now to claim ownership of hip hop in some form or fashion. And I don't really like that because it's creating an environment of disharmony, disunity. But I do think that there needs to be a space for us to be honest and open in saying that our Latino brothers and sisters were right there at the very start. And, I love all my people, especially those who have come forward to help create this, this beautiful art. And it wouldn't be the same without them. So I think we could probably we could definitely do a better job. And, listen, some of my closest friends are Latinos. Domingo, he's a producer who's produced everybody from, Big Pun and KRS-One. And he's been one of the most genuine people I've ever met in my life. And it doesn't end there. So I do think that we probably should and could do a better job.
Hip hop is so inclusive, right? I mean, hip hop is so inclusive, and that's the beauty
Yeah.
of it. Everybody, stay right here. We're gonna take a break, but still ahead, a look at some prominent hip hop trailblazers who are being left out of the telling of the story. Stay right here. Welcome back to theGrio and our special show highlighting the 50th anniversary of hip hop music. Billboard magazine, it's under fire right now for the way that it decided to celebrate this music industry milestone. Some people, like me, are crying foul over the publication's best rappers list. I want to bring back Chuck Jig-Saw Creekmur, CEO of All Hip Hop, and I want to bring back Bobbito Garcia, the DJ, the author, the filmmaker. I got to ask y'all, Chuck, I'm going to start with you. You know, one of the people who was upset that he was left off this top 50 list is Ja Rule. I happen to agree with Ja. I think he should have been on the top 50. But the question for me is not just should Ja Rule be on it, but what kind of criteria do you have that somebody who had such a profound impact on the culture, on the record sales, on hit making could be left off? You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen?
Basically, Ja Rule is. I don't have a problem with Ja Rule. So I think that what happens is it's a perception game, and I think that in the world of hip hop, you have to keep the perception high in addition to the artistry high. And if you start slacking or something happens and you don't reestablish order, you can get overlooked. You know, Ja Rule is all right with me, man. I think he's a hit maker. He was never a terrible MC, and I just think that he has a perception issue.
You know, it's interesting, Bobbito. When I look at somebody like a Ja Rule, and I'm like, this man had hit after hit after hit, and some of them were more pop or at least mainstream hits, and some were you know, stuff he did with Jay, stuff he did with DMX and Jay. You know, I'm thinking about like mixtape stuff. I'm thinking about all this kind of music. He had an impact on the culture. If he ain't one of
those are classic
top
joints.
50, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Joints, yeah.
So I'm like, if he ain't making none of that, it's like at some point, how can a list like this even come to be? You know what I mean? What's the criteria for making the list?
I mean, in my estimation, you know, Stretch, let me just say that, you know, I was on radio for 12 years in the 90s, to 2002, 8 of them with Stretch. You know, our criteria was, we didn't care if you was signed. We didn't care if you was from the West Coast or Japan. Like, if you was nice, you was nice, and you had a home. And that's why, you know, we were able to push the envelope with unsigned artists like Nas, Biggie, Mobb Deep, Big Pun, Eminem, Big L, Wu-Tang. You know, they all came through our show, and we ushered them forward, you know, in some cases getting deals and, you know, selling millions of records. And, you know, I mean, and now we get inducted into the NAB Broadcasting Hall of Fame. You know, it's for me, like, hip hop. If you're gonna talk about hip hop, Billboard is not the publication to make a top 50. Leave it alone. If you want to do the top 50 chart and have actual metrics, but if you're gonna have a cultural top 50, it's not coming from Billboard's plate. No knock on them, but just, you know, they haven't always been consistent there for hip hop, you know, since day one. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I don't disagree. Who are some of the cultural figures in hip hop who don't make the list because they don't have the Billboard hits or because they don't have the commercial appeal? Who are some of those names and voices that if y'all were making y'all own list, or that the culture was collectively making, that y'all would see as part of it?
I mean, you know, there's too many to mention, but I mean, you know, if we're going to talk about MCing, Pharoah Monch, in my estimation, is hands down, again, my estimation, the greatest MC that's ever lived. And he supersedes Rakim, he supersedes Nas, he supersedes G-Rap. And the reason why is because Pharoah, I heard his demo in 1989. Pharoah Monch has been rhyming incredibly well in like 5 different decades, right? Whether signed or not, you know, in between deals. And he's still as prolific as he's ever been. I can't say that about other MCs who developed their craft in the 80s and 90s. You know, some of them peaked, some of them kind of like had their great album and that was it. Or unfortunately, some of them passed. We can't talk about that.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Big L and Biggie, and a mountain of others who are no longer with us. But if we're gonna talk about greatest hip hop, period, like we got to talk about Rock Raider, another one who's no longer with us. Who wasn't an MC, but in terms of his DJing ability and his creative juices towards turntablism, how could you not include him in a top anything? He did record with the execution.
That's real. I mean, that's another name. I probably wouldn't go to you as far as you would. Farrell's a good friend of mine and a brilliant MC. I don't know if I have him as the GOAT. I have Black Thought above him based on that same criteria, just skill wise. But I don't think there's a wrong. I don't think there's a wrong answer. And my Philly might be poking out a little bit right now, so I understand that. But Chuck, who do you think who are the kind of people who you see as hip hop artists, hip hop folk whose names don't get stated, who don't get put on a list and get put in the museums and don't get all the love that they deserve?
Well, from a historical point of view, I always shout out DMC. They had Run on there, but I didn't have DMC. I'm always talking about Redman. I'm always talking about Cool G Rap. He's one of my definite goats. And
I think we lost Chuck there for a second, but that's all good. He was just about to say that my freestyle game is probably among the best that he's ever heard, and that when you think about the elite rappers / TV hosts, it really don't get better than me. I got bars. But Bobbito, I want to make sure that everybody also knows you ain't got to laugh that hard, man. You ain't got to laugh that hard.
Well, you can't. But you saying that with that University of Pennsylvania tie, you know what I'm saying? Like, you look crazy.
I know it don't work. It don't. Most Def wore a tie sometime. Hov wear a tie sometime. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? You can rap with a tie and a briefcase. I might. You know what? At the end of this show, if we got enough time, he gonna lay the tracks. I'm gonna spit the facts. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Everybody stay right here. When we come back, we're gonna break down some of the best rap battles of all time and get our guest takes on the winners and losers. Everybody, welcome back to theGrio. We have another game of this or that for my panelists. This time we talk about the best battles of all time and who won them. So the game is simple. I'm going to tell y'all the names of the two artists who went head to head, and you just got to tell me the winner. I don't want no explanations. I just want your answer. Let's get it popping. All right. Bobbito, I'm going to say, no, actually, I'm going to start because Bobbito's still laughing. I'm going to go with Chuck, Nas, or Jay.
Well, Nas won.
Okay. Bobbito, Roxanne Shante or Real Roxanne?
Oh, man. The real Roxanne was Puerto Rican, if I remember correct, but I'm going to go with Roxanne Shante. I mean, she got a movie about her that Mimi Valdez produced and Mahershala Ali was in. I mean, come on, yo. Shante wins that hands down.
All right. Nicki Minaj or Remy Ma, Chuck?
Remy. Yeah. That Shether was too much.
I know. Shether was legendary to me. Bobbito, LL Cool J or you know what? LL Cool J or Kumo D?
I thought you were gonna say LL and Cannabis. Because, I mean, you know.
That was too, it's funny, that's on my notes, but Cannabis is too easy, man. He told him 99% of his fans don't exist, man. I
mean, LL kind of cooked everybody on To the Break of Dawn. He
that's it. The answer is always LL. When we talking battles, the answer is always LL. I gotta go, y'all, but thank you for hanging out. We gotta run. All right, family, we have reached the end of the show, but before I let y'all go, I just want to remind y'all to embrace every aspect of hip-hop. What do I mean? I mean, if you are a hip-hop lover, you a hip-hop head, that means don't just listen to the music. I want y'all to embrace this b-boy culture that's still going around. People still break. There's still breaking crews out there. I want you to admire graph right. And I want you to see that people are still doing graffiti all around this world. I want you to fully appreciate what DJ culture is, not just locally at the party, but watch the competitions, watch the artistry, watch what people are doing. But also, family, you got to get down with this next generation. The same way people were dismissing us, dismissing our music, rolling trucks and steamrollers over CDs and records and tapes, the same way people were saying this music ain't gonna last, the same way people were saying this is the devil's music, many of us are dismissing the next generation of artistry. It's still hip-hop, but it's a generation that we say doesn't make good music or doesn't have good albums or aren't qualified for the top 50 or top 30 or top 10. Artistry never stops. Genius never stops. Black brilliance never stops. Black beauty never ceases. And so if we're going to embrace hip-hop and embrace our culture, we got to embrace the next generation too.